It is time now for us to talk about our main event of the evening, and we are going back to UFC 251 for this one because it's a rematch from that main event. Kamaru Usman defending the belt once again up against Jorge Masvidal. It's been really interesting to see the narrative of this fight playing out because we all go back to 251. Jorge Masvidal took that fight on 6 days' notice. He was replacing Gilbert Burns, who was the original headliner. Obviously lost that fight by unanimous decision. Bearing in mind what Jorge Masvidal had been doing, he was the BMF, he was coming off the Ben Askren knockout, 6 days notice, he had a lot of fan support behind him. But of course, over the past 12 months, we've seen Jorge maybe lose a lot of those fans with his behaviour away from the octagon. Kamaru Usman winning over a lot of people because of his performance against Gilbert Burns. And if you speak to some of the hardcore fans like I have, like the people who are on social media do shows like this, the impression I get is a lot more hardcore fans are rooting for Kamaru Usman this time around over Jorge. Is that fair to say?
I think so. Like you mentioned last time, it was like he had all that hype. The BMF. He beat Nate Diaz. He knocked out Ben Askren, which
Well,
aged
Jake Paul
pretty
beat
horribly
Ben
after.
Askren.
Yeah, so that didn't age super great, super impressive when you have YouTubers knocking him out. But yeah, I mean, I think that's completely fair to say. Coming into that first matchup, everybody was kind of like, oh, Kamaru Usman's boring, blah blah blah, foot stomps, blah blah blah, and Jorge is such a badass, he's gonna stuff the takedowns and knock him out. Kamaru Usman, nothing short of a dominant performance in that fight. I think this fight, I mentioned I'm more excited for the co-main. I think you are as well, because I just don't really see this fight playing out much differently despite Jorge coming in with a full training camp. So yeah, maybe his cardio looks a little bit better. He did defend, I think, an early couple takedowns. He defended pretty well, but then obviously as Kamaru held him up against the cage and wore on him and outmuscled him, as the cardio started to go, that's when the takedowns came much easier. And in terms of cardio, we know Usman's going to bring it for 25 minutes. Excellent cardio. Where this fight, I think it differs from the Gilbert Burns matchup is we saw Usman rely on the stand-up, which he has done at times, but he's very smart with the game plans. Like against Colby Covington, okay, Colby's a great wrestler. I think I'm a better striker. I have a really strong jab. You hear Trevor Whitman in his corner. You're a champion because you fight behind that jab. So he stayed striking and he looked good and he beat Colby striking. He did the same thing with Gilbert Burns. And yeah, Burns caught him early with a heavy shot. And that's pretty much Burns' only win condition there that a lot of people expected. And he almost got there. But then as Usman recovered and as the fight went on, he looked dominant. And I think that's just what happens here, except I don't think he relies on the striking as opposed to those two matchups because he knows that he has that massive wrestling advantage. Took him down 5 times in the last fight. I think he's going to hold him up against the cage, wear on him again. Maybe we'll see those foot stomps again. I'm sure we will. And I think he takes him down, and I think he gets little resistance, and he probably finds a finish on the mat this time. So give me Kamaru Usman. I think he's the rightful favorite. I'm not even that excited about this fight. I think he dominates here.
I do have to say, I have to give the UFC and Usman a lot of credit for really embracing the foot stomps meme because I watched one of the promo packages where they did like a flashback to the 251 fight, and there's this super slow-mo of Usman foot stomping Masvidal. So they're definitely embracing the meme of that. But no, I agree with you in terms of Usman striking. I think that he realised with the Gilbert Burns fight that he needed to up this side of his game. If there was area which Usman maybe wasn't as comfortable in, it was his striking ability. And we saw that against Colby. He barely got past that Colby fight. It went to a final round. You can make an argument that Colby was maybe winning the fight going into that final round. Since he went to Colorado to train with Whitman, he's closed up that side of his game. And he is now an all-round fighter. He's more than just a wrestler. But I agree with you. I think for this fight, he saw he had so much success against Masvidal first time around by pinning him up against the fence, wearing him down, using his wrestling. I think he's going to do the same thing again. What do you think's the biggest reason why the UFC have chosen to give Masvidal this title fight? Is it Is it because they believe the idea of it could be more competitive with a full training camp? Is it a guy from Florida fighting in Jacksonville, Florida? Is it because he's the biggest star in the division and they want to try and make some money? Endeavor obviously have taken over the UFC, want to try and get some of that money back. What do you think's the biggest factor in Masvidal getting the fight?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think you hit on the most compelling part. Yeah, obviously Jorge is like, well, I didn't have a full training camp and I took it on short notice. So maybe the UFC feels like they owe him something like, okay, well, prove it to us. We'll give you something. But I think the more interesting part that you hit on is, he is street Jesus from Florida, right? So having the first fight card back with fans, obviously they're going to be a pro, you would think a pro Masvidal crowd for the most part, despite the stuff outside of the octagon. I think he's going to have a lot of people cheering for him. So maybe that's what the UFC was thinking. But I also think part of it was the UFC is like, okay, well, what do we do with Usman now? I think a lot of people would want to see the Colby Covington rematch. Obviously, that didn't materialize, but other than that, like who do you give him other than Jorge in this division? If you can't get the Colby fight, then who else is there? At least Jorge, you can make the argument, oh, he took the fight on short notice the first time, and he's from Florida, so he'll sell tickets so we could sell that fight. Other than that, if you can't get the Colby rematch, then what do you do with him? So I think that was kind of played into it as like, just a combination of those factors is probably what did it. But like I said before, I don't think it really changes the result. I think Usman looks dominant here.
If Masvidal is to have a chance in this fight, because bookmakers don't really give him much of a chance. If you look at the polls on the YouTube page, 81% pick Kamaru Usman to win this one. If Masvidal is going to get this done, what's his best way to do it?
I think it's got to be an early knockout. He's obviously done that before. We talked about the Ben Askren thing. I don't think Usman's gonna like immediately shoot for like a telegraphed single leg and eat a knee. So I don't think that's super likely. But I'm not completely discrediting his power. We talked about how Gilbert Burns hit him with a big shot or two early on. That's certainly within the cards. It is MMA. Anything can happen. But I just think Usman goes back to that wrestling here where he takes the path of least resistance. I think if Masvidal has any success, it's going to be he stuffs an early takedown, desperately stuffs the takedowns, and hurts him on the feet somehow. But again, I just don't think it's super likely.
I'm in the same boat as you. I think Masvidal's best chance is to, if he's going to get it done, it's going to be an early knockout. I don't see any other result from that. And that doesn't really bode well for Masvidal either, because outside of the Ben Askren fight, I've always known him for being quite a slow starter. We saw it against Darren Till. Darren Till dropped him early in the first round in their fight. So it's not really Masvidal's nature to start blindingly fast, but it's something he needs to do if he wants to try and get this win. We're both in the same boat. We both agree that Usman's going to win this one. How do you think he gets it done? Unanimous decision, 50-45?
I think probably decision or submission. I lean submission just because, watching, and yeah, Masvidal's cardio might look a little bit better, but watching the first fight, a gassed out Masvidal who I know typically he has good submission defense, but watching Usman just dominate him on the mat, I wouldn't be shocked to see him find a submission this time around.